Welcome to Danny Designs. I'm Danny, level 100, and I want to tell you about my idea for a new infected type for The Last of Us 2. One thing I loved about The Last of Us was the infected. This wasn't just a generic zombie game. They were believable, interesting, and grounded in science. There was a tragicness to these infected, something that many video games simply fail to achieve. Many times, zombies in video games are just hordes of the formerly living. These infected, however, told a story. You knew that every single clicker out there once was a person that through a slow, torturous process became an infected. The only thing I really didn't like about the infected was the bloater. I really felt that it was the most gamey aspect of The Last of Us, and for a game that's all about immersion and telling a cinematic story through gameplay, the bloater sticks out like a sore thumb. What I intend to do is introduce my infected that I designed, the Wanderer, and I want to explain how the player interacts with it and how it fits right into the lore of The Last of Us. And this video may contain some mild spoilers, and with all that out of the way, let's continue. So let's talk about the infected that are presented to us in The Last of Us. Unlike most zombie fiction, the virus in The Last of Us is actually a fungus. A mutated cordyceps fungus to be precise. The cordyceps fungus is commonly found in the rainforest where it infects ants and other insects. What makes it so interesting is that the fungus actually takes control of that ant's mind, to the point that it will take control of the ant and force it back into the colony so it has a greater chance of infecting the rest, and therefore continue the fungus's life cycle. In The Last of Us, the cordyceps fungus has now hyper-evolved to the point where it infects humans. And just like the insects that it used to infect, this cordyceps virus slowly takes over the mind and body of its human victim. And once a human has been infected, they become a stage 1 infected known as a runner. Runners are kind of like your 28 days later zombie. They have red eyes, they can't control their body, but there's still an element of humanity in there trying to fight back. After that, you have a stalker. And a stalker is essentially the fungus controlling the human body. The stalker has way more control of the human body at this point, and you can start seeing some growth of the cordyceps virus starting to poke through the head of its victim. And probably the most iconic enemy in The Last of Us is the clicker. And the clicker at this point has been taken over by the fungus for so long, it now has these hardened plates of cordyceps breaking through the skull. And clickers are very dangerous. They hunt with echolocation, and they're capable of one-shotting a player. However, according to the life cycle of The Last of Us, if a clicker lives long enough, it becomes a bloater. And a bloater essentially is just a giant infected covered with hardened plates of the cordyceps fungus. And these plates act as a type of organic armor. The bloater is counter to everything that the infected are. It just screams generic enemy. You need to have a big bullet sponge enemy, so here's the bloater. And I felt that this goes against what the goal of the cordyceps fungus is. After it reaches the clicker state, the human body, in my opinion, would be so deteriorated and so worn down that the clicker would then try to find a populated area or a safe area where it may die and release its spores to infect more humans. And the bloater does have some elements of this. He does lob spore grenades at the player, but I feel like his design doesn't make sense. If you're telling me that a bloater is a human that's been covered with cordyceps fungus for years, it doesn't really make sense to me. The bloater would have fallen apart. Let me introduce to you what I would imagine comes after clickers. What I propose is the Wanderer. It looks like a clicker from the front, but on its back it has these long stalks. The fungus knows that the host body is near death, so it's searching for a dark, claustrophobic area so that it may drop dead and release its spores to continue the cycle. As they walk around, they leave behind a trail of deadly spores. These spores will float in the air for a few seconds before it dissipates and becomes harmless. However, if a player were to wander into the spore cloud, they can become infected, resulting in a game over. The spore cloud is easy to spot, and in the dark will shimmer when the player aims their flashlight at it. On occasion, the Wanderer will have a seizure, which will cause them to sneeze and release a cloud of spores all around them. Wanderers are still as deadly as a clicker if provoked. For the most part, they'll leave players alone. They will just walk around minding their own business, but if a player bumps into them, attacks them, or makes a loud noise, they may provoke the Wanderer to attack. And with the long stalks poking out of its back, the Wanderer cannot be strangled or shivved from behind like a typical infected. The only way to remove the spore stalks is with a flamethrower or sustained gunfire. A shotgun blast will sometimes knock all the stalks off. It's usually ill-advised to waste your resources on a single wanderer, especially because wanderers can oftentimes be found with other infected units, typically runners. It's also ill-advised to kill a wanderer because upon death, it will just release a large cloud of spores in a desperate attempt to infect any nearby host. Let's break down the new life cycle. You have a fungal spore that infects a human. In about 48 hours, that spore in that human turns them into a runner. At about a month, that runner will turn into a stalker. And after a few months, that stalker will then become a clicker. And after about a year, the host body will start to break down and become a wanderer until that wanderer finally dies and releases the spores again to continue the life cycle. From the moment of infection to death, each infected lives roughly about a year to a year and a half, depending on the host body. In my opinion, it's important that the infected have a short, violent lifespan. According to the Last of Us wiki, bloaters take about 10 to 15 years to manifest. Now that doesn't make any sense to me. How can a clicker that is constantly out in the wild, having to contend with survivors, weather, starvation, etc., how do you expect me to believe that a clicker will survive 10 to 15 years? But making the life cycle short makes a lot of sense for the fungus. The fungus is just trying to multiply. It wants to infect a host and use that body to procreate. I feel like the Wanderer is a nice addition to the game. It falls nicely into the life cycle established by the cordyceps fungus. Do you agree with me that the Wanderer seems like a more natural fit into The Last of Us? Do you think it will be a great fit for The Last of Us 2? Tell me down below in the comments section. I honestly would really want to hear what you think. This is a character that I've developed years ago, and it's something that I still think would be a great addition to the game. And if you like the video, please give it a like, a thumbs up. You can check me out on my social media, all right here. If you want to help support the show, you can check out my TeePublic page, or go to danlevel100.com, click on the Amazon ads, and buy whatever you want. By shopping through these ads, I make a small cut of whatever you buy. It's a fantastic and easy way to help support the show. And links to everything will be in the description, all my sources and articles, links down below. And I want to say thank you to everybody for watching. I'm DannyLevel100, and I'll catch you later. Take care, goodbye. Let's see, what are people saying about The Last of Us 2 on Twitter? Okay, hoping zero zombies, clickers, walkers, whatever the you want to call them, do not appear in The Last of Us Part 2.